Hey guys, Kismet here! So I made a sword for my SheRa costume, and I thought I would kind of show you guys my process. So I started with a board of wood that was 7 inches, and then I sawed it down to 36 inches long, and it was 1 inch thick. I sawed that down, drew on my sword pattern, cut off those ends, and started planing away. This planer is kind of like a cheese grater, which is fun. This part is a little more difficult because you're not necessarily going with the grain, but just keep at it, you'll get there. Once you do start doing the edges though, and you start working with the wood grain, it's a lot easier, so don't get discouraged by that point. Once it was all planed, I took my sander, gave it a nice once over on both sides just to kind of smooth it out, get rid of any little splinters. I drew on my first one's pattern and used my Dremel tool and some circle bits to sort of etch that pattern in there. And then once those were done, I took this other bit from my Dremel tool and just sort of deepened them a little bit. They were pretty surface level, and I wanted to make sure they were really, really in there. Once the circles were done, I moved on to the, I guess, line work, lines, the straight bits. This part could be kind of difficult because this Dremel bit tool isn't necessarily, it's kind of squirrely, it's a little hard to control. My advice is to start pretty surface level with your depth that you're pushing into the wood and then go over it a couple times to get the desired depth. Once I was done with that, I went ahead and gave it a nice coat of very light blue paint. I decided to go with a blue from the TV show rather than like a actual silver. I used this mix of 3 paints to get my color for the inside of the etches. My advice with this is if you get a little sloppy with your paint job, don't worry about it. You can kind of wipe it off with your finger. And if it really bothers you, you can go back later with some more light blue paint and just do some touch-ups. I should also mention that at one point, although I didn't film it, I did take this outside and do some silver spray paint splatters. I just held the can pretty far above the sword and did some really, really light strokes of the spray paint. Okay, so for attaching the handle, this is just like a cardboard dowel that I'm pretty sure I got from like a saran wrap container or something. I used a 2-part epoxy glue that you mix together and it immediately starts hardening, so you gotta work kind of fast. I first attached it to the handle, put the handle over the sword, clamped it down so it wouldn't wiggle side to side, and then just loaded it up with that epoxy glue. After that, I reinforced the ever-loving shit out of it with some hot glue, both the actual handle part that was coming over it and then reinforced the sides as well. Quick tip, if you need to kind of smooth out your glue or adjust the shape, lick your finger and then it won't stick to you as much and burn you. So here's reinforcing those sides I was talking about. Put it in, you adjust it, and then you keep building upwards. Feel free to be pretty sloppy with this because you'll be covering it with foam later. So at one point I decided that to incorporate my foam design a little easier, it would be better to just get these corners out of the way so that when I did attach my foam pieces, they would be a much smoother transition. For the crystal in the center, I decided to do my own little design with a bunch of rhinestones. I took this Mod Podge, any white glue will do, put a layer down, put my gems on it, covered those in Mod Podge a few times, and yeah. For the hilt and all these decorative pieces, I hand drew this pattern for it and then cut it out. What you're seeing me do right now is I'm reattaching a piece of the pattern so that I can cut out the underside of this part of the sword. You'll see what I mean in a second. So there's that. Fold it in half. You can see where I drew the line for the under part. I'm just going to cut along that with some scissors. and then trace that on my foam as well. Remember to do 2 for each of these because you're gonna want one for the front and one for the back. Okay, so I did decide to cover my sword in some resin. I was really inspired by Sarah Spaceman on Instagram to do this method. I cut out all of my hilt pieces, sanded them down so they were nice and smooth, and then, sorry guys, rest of the fucking owl, I guess, because I just put this together. I didn't even think to record it. At this point in the night, the con was the next day, and I was in real crackhead hours, so sorry about that. To make the hilt, I took some Instamorph, which is a thermoplastic that comes in these little pellets, and I took mostly scraps that I already had in there, put it in some hot water, molded it into a ball, just kind of rolled it around in my hands, and well, bam, pommel. I went ahead and attached it, painted the whole thing, and hoorah, SheRa sword. If you guys have any questions or comments on this, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. I'll have all of my info in the drop-down box, and thanks for watching, guys. Bye!